What up? What up, Dealer Talk podcast followers? Coming to you live from our Facebook page, making history over here at the Dealer Talk podcast with our first live session ever. So glad that you guys can join us on this very special day. And I'm just excited for this opportunity to be able to share some space and time with all the followers, all the people that have been tuning in for the past 2 seasons. And it is my sincere hope that you can gain some value, some insights from this session. And as I always say, take it back to the dealership so you can implement it in your day-to-day. All right. So today we have our resident guest, Mr. Sean Kelley, the thecarbizcoach. And we're going to be talking about coaching as we announced last week. I'm always excited to have you on the show, dude, because number one, I always learn a ton from our sessions. But dude, I believe in your purpose, right? To bring coaching to the car business. It's something that I can get behind myself, and I want to do whatever I can to help you in that objective. And so I'm glad that you're here, dude. How you doing, man?
Well, I'm fantastic, my friend. I got in from Ohio early this morning. I had a phenomenal meeting with some new partners, you could say, and I just spent the last few hours coaching. And Herb, it's an honor to be back on the show, and I'm excited to be your first guinea pig and your first live broadcast of Dealer Talk, man. How exciting!
Yeah, no, for sure, man. A little bit nervous, but we'll get there. We'll get there little by little. It's kind of ironic because you've been on the show for every single season, and we've never really talked about coaching. We've never dig deep into the subject. And the first episode, we talk about your personal journey, which I know Eric and myself felt super honored that you share that with us on our show. And by the way, it's one of our most popular downloaded shows. So if you want to learn about this dude in a more personal, intimate way, make sure to check that session out. Then last season, we talked about accountability and implementation and kind of how that plays a role in the success of the dealership. But I'm very excited to talk about coaching with you because I've personally received coaching from you, and I've learned a lot from it. It's always been super impactful. I mean, we just had a coaching conversation last week, and I gained so much perspective from that conversation that I'm sure it's going to pay some dividends for me later on, right? So, yeah, man, I'm super stoked that you're here and that we're going to have that conversation, dude.
Well, it's my honor, Herb, and it's also my honor to be your coach. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to help you grow where you want to and need it most through my coaching process and framework. So it's working with leaders like you in the auto industry is probably the reason I get out of bed every morning, and and your success and the people that I coach is what fuels my fire to do even more. So it's my absolute honor.
Right on, man. So, all right. So let's kind of kick things off. I have this particular question that I wanted to start things with. And that question is, as individuals, I don't feel like a lot of us, and I include myself in that, we don't look at coaching as a resource. And here's what I mean. You wouldn't expect a professional athlete, right, to show up on game day and not have rehearsed his position, his role at least 100 times. But when it comes to selling, when it comes to leadership, and this doesn't apply necessarily to the car business, but let's kind of keep it within the vertical. But I think that this is a topic that applies to just life. We don't look at coaching as something that can help us, right? That can move us in that direction of growth. And most importantly, I feel that in order for us to be able to grow, whether it's personally or professionally, that we need skills, right? We need skills, we need knowledge that we don't possess in our current state. And so my question is, why is it that we have that expectation of success when we really haven't done the work, the training, the preparation to, grow and change and excel?
Great question. Thank you for asking that. And, it's interesting. I think we don't know what we don't know, right? We are unconsciously incompetent. And in the car business, and I agree with you, it's a challenge for a lot of verticals, but the car business is so progressive in so many ways and so far behind in so many ways. It's really It's a really crazy industry, and it's different from a lot of the others. And, it's so sheltered, right? There's not a lot of outside influence on our industry because it's so unique. So we don't know what we don't know. And since the dawn of the auto industry, leadership we've all been leading through industrial age leadership, blind obedience, right? Yelling, telling, and selling in order to get our employees to do what we need them to do. And there are a lot of intrinsically motivated people that in the car business that will take on that. They have that desire to grow individually, and they do the same thing that they've always known, right? Because again, we don't know what we don't know, which is receive training. So, what do managers do to try to improve their people, right? We train them, and then or we hire an outside trainer, or we buy our own training if we're an employee who wants to grow individually. So I think it's really one of the biggest challenges that I face as a coach in the car business is most people don't even know what it is. Most trainers don't know what it is. And I didn't know what it was. I was no different, man. And I always tell the story. The owner of my company said, "Sean, you should learn about coaching." And I scratched my head and I was like, "What is that? Is that when you yell at one person instead of everyone?" It's not that I yelled, but I think we don't know what we don't know. So if you don't know what effective coaching is, how could you use it as a resource, right?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Do you think, okay, so kind of following along that train of thought, do you think that there's a misunderstanding on the definition of it? Do you think that people just think that it's, I don't know what the word is, but maybe it's too, positive thinking and, and motivation and inspiration, and they don't really realize what coaching truly is. I mean, for you, what's your, how would you define coaching, and what does, what it means to you, and why are you on this quest, man, to bring it to the automotive industry?
Well, thank you. You're a king of great questions, man. And yes, there's the word it's any word really. You can do this with any word. Ask 100 salespeople, ask 100 sales managers, "Hey, what does this word mean to you?" And how many different answers do you get almost every time, right? So coaching's no different. There's a lot of misconceptions. There are people that think, that they hear coaching and they think it's like counseling and it's a mushy, touchy-feely, lovey-dovey sort of thing. There is, you know what I mean? There's people, think about this, managers that use the word coaching as a form of discipline, right? So they say, "I'm going to coach you." And coaching you is, "Herb, you're not making your calls, you're not producing results, you're fired." So
makes perfect sense.
And then let's take it to a whole nother level. I mean, anyone can just call themselves a coach, right? Like literally, you could just say, "I'm Herb, the dealer talk coach," and so at the end of the day, there is accredited. There are ways to get accredited, and there's courses you can take. And I'm excited to share a little bit more about that a little later here. But yes, at the end of the day, anyone can call themselves a coach. So you've got a lot of people peddling coaching that maybe don't even know what it is, and they've given bad experiences with it. And like you talked about earlier, there's just the misconception, and we don't know what we don't know. So yes, I think that a lot of people just don't really know what it is. So if you ask me, what is my definition of coaching? So here's my definition of coaching. A manager's job is to add value to their people. That is your primary job. Now, as you know, I was a special operations sergeant. I spent 2 years in combat zone deployments. And it didn't matter if you were, now my job in the Army was psychological operations, but there was also cooks in the Army, and there was infantry people, and there was all these different communications people. But when the what hits the fan, your primary role in the Army is infantry, right? You're picking up a weapon and you're fighting. So as a leader, we have all these different responsibilities, all these different tasks to do every day. And in reality, your primary role is to add value to your people and make them better, right? So my definition of coaching is the most effective way to add value to your people with ongoing and consistent individual personal development.
Wow, man, I love that. And so obviously you see a need for that in the industry, which is why you're on this quest, right?
Correct. Yeah. The need, Herb, and again, I didn't know it was a need until I realized what I had in coaching. But man, I was a frustrated GSM. I had the industry average turnover, and I wanted to be the best manager at my dealer group. I wanted I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to get a promotion within my dealer group, and I was excited. I knew there was a better way than how I was doing it. And it's not that I was bad or I didn't have good results, but I didn't know what I didn't know. We don't know what we don't know. And
Right.
and I had the turnover and all that. And then only when the owner, helped me discover coaching, and then I started studying it, and it blew my mind because it was a whole new way of communicating. It's a whole different language in reality. So I didn't realize how critical it was. But think about it, man. You've got veterans, and when you're talking about training, right? And you say, hey, sales veteran, you've been selling cars 20 years. What did you think about the training? Or are you excited to go to the training? And they resist. And they're like, or if they do go and willingly, they come back and say, I always get one or two takeaways, right? And when I discovered what coaching was and how it impacts any employee of any tenure, it doesn't matter if you're a salesperson who understands the basics or you're a dealer principal. Coaching makes a massive positive impact for anyone on your team. And it's amazing how a salesperson can go to training, week after week after week and not see any measurable gain in their results. And I'm not saying bad about training, because it is an important part of development. It's the foundation. But coaching impacts anyone. One coaching conversation can double a salesperson's results. And I've seen it happen multiple times throughout, obviously. Sometimes just one conversation doubles their results because coaching removes a limiting belief or a barrier to their success or a mindset that was preventing them from taking the action they needed to take. It's so powerful and impactful. And only after coaching for about 2 years, the 20 people on my team as a consistent part of my routine, and turnover was eliminated, and we were the only store up in a down market without spending more on advertising. And then when my salespeople started asking me to be their ordained minister and marry them on the showroom floor, to be one of my salesperson's godfathers, that's when I realized the impact that this was having on their lives. And that's when I realized that this is what the car business needs. And that's when I decided to, I went from this shift of I've got to be the number one manager at my store to I can make a huge impact on the lives of so many people if I can just teach managers how to coach. And so that's why I set out on that journey. And that, my friend, is what it boils down to. It impacts the lives and it impacts the results, and it helps people just love what they do every day. The car business has got to be fun, my friend. Don't you agree?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally, dude. I mean, especially, you're spending more time there than you're spending with your family, right? So it's got to be something that you enjoy doing, enjoy going to every single day. So yeah, man, I totally agree. And that's why I love what you're doing, man. And I'm excited to share later on what you've been working on, because I think that's going to be something that's going to add so much value to so many people in this industry. It's really something special for sure. So. Okay, so we've talked about this, and I'm pretty sure we covered it on one of our episodes, but I wanted to bring that question back, and hopefully we can kind of evolve it a little bit, or maybe discuss it a little bit in more length. Because when you and I had this conversation, I remember we were visiting dealers, and I think we were in Merced or San Francisco, somewhere around there.
Yeah, we're driving around California. That was
yeah, for sure, man. I had a lot of fun. And we after the day, we kind of sat down and have dinner, and dude, you said something to me that I'll just never forget, man. And that was, you told me the difference between training and coaching. And for me, that was an aha moment. I don't know if you saw that, but it definitely was something that got me thinking. And I wanted to kind of bring that definition back and kind of evolve that a little bit, because I think that the reason why I want to do that is because I think a lot of people kind of mix the two together. And so I want to be able to separate those definitions, but at the same time, I want us to kind of touch on the prospect, if you will, that there is room in the dealership for both, or is there, as a question, right? Is there room in the dealership for both, and do they work hand in hand, in your opinion, or is it conflicting, or you know what I mean?
Great question. So is there room for both? 100%. The best part about training is it gives people the foundation that they need, if done properly, where they're trained and they're tested for competency, and training covers the the ability side of things, right? For someone to take action and do what they need to do to succeed, right? They have to have the ability to do it, right? Can I do it? Because if I can't do it, because I don't have the ability, I won't do it. And then they have to want to do it, and then they have to need to do it. So coaching covers the whole want and need side of it. And that, at the end of the day, is really the most simple form of what's the difference between training and coaching. Training gives people the ability. Coaching gives people the desire, the support, the accountability, and breaks down the barriers that might still prevent them from taking action. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. So as far as the difference, so I mean, this is my take, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? But training is something that you use for skill, right? Training allows you to develop your skill. Coaching, it allows you to grow, right? As a person, as a professional. Can we talk a little bit about the difference between the two as it applies to the dealership, right? So, for example, you can't train your based on the definition, right? You can't train your sales force to have more hunger and have more desire and have like, that's something that you have to coach them into, right? Passion and being driven and stuff. You can train them on the tool or solution of the month or whatever the case may be. So I kind of wanted to touch that, so the decision makers that are maybe considering coaching can kind of correlate a difference between the two.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's one of my favorite sayings that I always say this. I say a 20-car sales manager can't train a 30-car salesperson to sell 50 cars a month, but they can coach them there, right? So I was at a Lincoln Mercury store, and they lost Lincoln Mercury franchise, and I ended up so I was the used car manager. I ended up being a used car manager of just an independent lot, part of a bigger dealer group. And it was a 60 or so a month car store, right? And as a salesperson, I was the top salesperson of that store, and I sold about 20 cars, 20 cars a month. And at some point, I'd switched to this bigger Hyundai store that was in one of the best markets in St. Louis. And when I switched, I took on a team of I had about 20 people, and a lot of them were selling well over 20 cars a month. In fact, one of the salespeople that I started selling cars with in St. Louis City at my Lincoln Mercury store and was training, he actually moved over there first. So when I came over, he was selling more than 25 cars a month on average, right? So here I had a guy that I used to sell more cars than, and then I was his used car manager, and now he's selling more cars than me at this other dealership that I started managing. And I think there's a lot of managers out there that maybe weren't rock star salespeople. Maybe they weren't selling more cars than everyone else. And for them, and I coach a lot of managers in that situation. I've coached had a lot of conversations where that's come up, and the manager's like, man, how do I make someone better who sells 3 times more cars than I did when I was a car salesperson? I don't have any clout with them. But the beauty of coaching is it's not your topic or your agenda. It's your employees, right? So I'll share just a couple of my favorite examples where coaching has made a massive positive impact right at the dealership. So practical and tactical stories that you guys could use right now, right? And so I started this new dealership, and one of the top salespeople there, he's about almost 60 years old, and he's a phenomenal salesperson. He's almost a 40-car guy.
60?
And say again?
Did you say 60?
Yeah, he's almost 60 years old, and he's the top guy at the dealership. His name's Tommy. He's a great guy. And every day, now before I was a coach, Tommy would come to me every day and say, I want a promotion, boss. I want a promotion. And I'm like, you're killing it as the salesperson. And I would just, like, why would you want to be a manager? And that's what I'd tell him. And I'd get all defensive, and I'd be attached to my agenda and my outcome, right? Why do you want, you're crazy? And then I'm thinking also, and I'm sweeping it under the rug because he's not ready to be a manager. He's not meeting my expectations. I wouldn't promote him at that point, right? So this goes on for over a year, and I'm just sweeping it under the rug, and I'm like, no, Tom, why do you want to be a manager? And I'm just ignoring it, right? To the point where he's probably going to quit his dealership. By the way, that was my company's most coached on topic 2 years ago was people that were going to quit because they couldn't get a promotion. So here I am doing what everyone else does, is sweep it under the rug and ignore it and hope it goes away, or, and push my agenda. But at some point I became a coach, and I sat down with him and I had a coaching conversation, and it kind of sounded like this. What's getting in the way of you being a manager here? What expectations will you need to meet in order for me to invite you to the table of leadership, right? What will you be responsible for if you become a manager? What is so important to you about becoming a manager? And after asking these questions, I found out several things. Number one, he had no clue what it was going to take. And this is a guy that's been for a long time, right? But he had no clue what he was going to be responsible for. Okay. He doesn't want to do that crap, pardon my French, but I'm just going to call it like it is. He doesn't want to do any of that. Thirdly, when I shared with him where he needed to improve in order to get it, he said he was willing to grow in that area. And then finally, when I found out why it was important to him, he said, I'm going to retire soon, and I'll feel like a loser if I retire as a salesperson and not as a manager. And I was like, brother, there's number one, you've been the top salesperson here. You've got a box full of trophies. There's nothing loser about who you are and all the people you've made an impact for with their car purchases and how you've helped our company. I was like, but I'll tell you what, the last 3 months you're here, when you're going to retire, your last 3 months, I'll make you my floor manager. You'll be my assistant manager. You'll work the desk with me. You'll TO customers, and then you will be able to retire a manager. And he's like, you would do that for me? And I was like, absolutely. And it was a phenomenal conversation, but I detached from the outcome. I stopped pushing my agenda, and I just became insatiably curious, as a coach should be. And I asked him questions, and guess what? He never came to me again asking for a promotion, and his threats to quit went away when he decided that this is what he wanted to do. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally, man. And that's, I'll go back to our conversation that you and I had our coaching conversation that we had last week. Like sometimes that those coaching sessions allow us to look within, right? Because sometimes we think that we want something, but it's not really what we want. And it's just because maybe we're clouded, in this case by a title or what we think it's going to be, but we don't really understand what it entails, right? And maybe it doesn't fit with who we are or what we're really trying to accomplish, but we just feel like that's the next logical step. And so we can sacrifice a good thing for something that's not necessarily in our own best interest. And so I think that that's really where for me, the value comes in. And I think when I apply that to the automotive industry, yeah, man, I think it's super valuable. And it's one of those differentiators, if you will, that, really allow us to kind of, get into the right mindset and the right perspective, right, in order to achieve more, for sure.
And I do want to loop back around to your question, which was, really, is there room for training and coaching? So yes, 100%, training should be part of the process. In fact, almost 3/4 of the dealers that I coach have internal trainers, internal, people development. The managers do it, or they have external. They have third party. I've got dealerships with Grant Cardone, Psychology, Joe Verde. But as soon as they realize what I do is and how it differs, there's no problem. And there's definitely, it's a massive, actually, it's an even bigger value add when there is training.
So I wanted to bring this down to data, right? Because I think that that's important. Again, for anybody that's considering coaching or considering, a differentiator, right, for their teams. What's the best way to measure effective coaching and the overall impact to the dealership, right? Because it's not like a solution, right? Like you go, you sell a widget, and then you go to the dealership with a monthly report, and you're like, hey, you got all these SRP, all these VDPs, and you can see it, and it's quantifiable and all that stuff. Even though a lot of those reports obviously are skewed in the the benefit of the vendor, but there's some sort of lead behind. There's some sort of data that you can leave for the decision makers. How do you measure it, man? How should coaching be measured effectively?
Another great question. And, it's funny because at first I'm wanting to just spout off the solution, right? But the funny part is, which I have and I'll share, but I think back to the first 6 months that I started coaching or attempting to coach, let's put it that way. You can't read a manual on how to fly a plane and then just be able to fly it across the country just because you read a book on it, right? So I read these books on coaching, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to coach. And 6 months in, I hadn't seen any gains or successes from it, other than my veteran salespeople that I just kept forcing into the process. They were like, Sean, what are we doing here? And I'm like, I don't know. There's something here. I know it. I'm just missing something. And then my with my new guys, it would just turn into a training. I would just start telling them what to do. And so I wasn't really coaching. But part of effective coaching, and there's several, there's 4 different types of coaching, which we'll touch on that too if you want, and that would be a value add for you guys, for your viewers. But part of effective coaching is the measurement and the tracking and the follow-up around it. We often, we tell people what to do. We have an expectation. Just because I told you what to do, you're going to go do it. Well, in reality, how many times are we at the desk loading our salesperson's lips saying, hey, this is what you go need to, because we're working 12 deals, and we say, this is what you go need to say, go say this to the customer. But you follow them and you listen, and they never say it, right? They just don't say it. And the reason is because, well, one of the reasons is because, number one, it was the manager's plan. It wasn't theirs, right? If I tell you how I do it, it's not maybe the same way you would want to do it or would be willing to do it. So ultimately, that's one of the challenges. And the other side of it is they don't expect us to follow them to the desk and listen and check in and then have a coaching conversation around why they didn't do it and what got in the way. So effective coaching has measurements. It has specific KPIs, and there's a follow-up and check-ins around those, and you're measuring those results. So when I say KPIs, I mean key performance indicators. And there's 2 sides of KPIs. You've got leading indicators and lagging indicators. So leading indicators are the behaviors, and then the lagging indicators are the results. It's really easy to measure results, right? How many units did I get? What was my gross profit? Right. But they're hard to influence. Now, on the other side, leading indicators are easier to influence, but harder to measure and track. So what we need to measure, what produces the result? Or if I asked you this coaching question, because you're in the marketing, you're big in the marketing world, right? So, a leading indicator is like, okay, we're generating internet leads, maybe, right? I guess for a marketing company, that'd be a result. What would be
visits or BDPs, SRPs, that sort of thing.
Okay, so what would be the behaviors that a marketing company or a dealership would need to do on a tactical level in order to produce better results there?
Different strategies, right? SEO, SEM, social media campaigns, things of that nature. And then route customers, depending, right? Let's say that the goal is to increase website traffic, right? So you create those campaigns on these platforms, and then you route that traffic to the website so that you can, increase the visits and so forth.
Okay, so a coaching conversation. So let's say I would enter into a coaching conversation with a marketing manager on that stuff, and they say, well, I want to increase my VDPs. And then I could ask them, so what are you currently doing in order to do that? And they might say, well, here's what I'm doing. And I might see that after I ask them enough questions, I might find out that they're not blogging. And I know that blogging with the right keywords, right, it creates some decent organic SEO if posted on the right platforms in the right way. And I might point that out and ask them, have you ever considered blogging? And they might say, well, no, I haven't. Or yeah, but I stopped for whatever. All of a sudden, at the end of our coaching conversation, what are you going to do moving forward? And after the discussion, we're collaborating around an action plan. So I'm not telling them what to do, but I've given them some tools and some education. Ultimately, it's their plan, and they've got to come up with it, because if they build it, they own it. And if they own it, they'll act on it. So they come up with the plan. They're going to start blogging, and they're going to post it on this site, and they're going to include these keywords. So when should I check in on that to see how those blogs are affecting your results? 2 weeks from now, 30 days, 60, whatever. We check in, we see if they've done the blogs, and if they've done the blogs, and if they've, all of a sudden, if they've done the leading indicators, we have a coaching win. And we've all heard the saying, focus on the process and the result takes care of itself. That's how coaching produces results, because it impacts the behaviors that produce the results.
Right. But so do you think that, and this was going to be one of my other questions, but do you think that the expectation is key then, right? Let's make sure that we have those right expectations from the gate, because, when it comes to coaching, like, there's not a one size fits all, right? All dealerships, they're in different markets. They have different brands. They have different issues, different things that you're working towards improving, right? So, just my thought is, how we got to set the right expectations so that we can measure it effectively, right? So how do you, like, what is your process? Like, let's say that somebody's listening to this and they reach out to you tomorrow and they're like, hey man, I saw this episode that you did on the podcast. I think that I can use your services. Come in. And then you do an assessment, and then what's the next step? That now you get down to expectations, or you wait for them to set those? Like, how does that interaction take place?
It's a great question. I'm thank you for asking it again. So at the end of the day, you're 100% right. And one of my favorite leadership quotes is the Vince Lombardi quote, where he said, "My job is to find 40 different ways to move 40 different men." That's what a coach does, right? So, for instance, I would, in order to set expectations around coaching with any individual, first off, I've got to help them understand what coaching is. I've got to give them the gift of my positive intent. So I call it a recruitment statement. All right. So number one, because the human mind defaults to fear, anxiety in the worst case scenario, and there's those misalignments about coaching. So some barriers to effective coaching are trust. If all I've ever done is paid you to my office and yell at you, and then I say, okay, we're going to coach now, you're not like thinking, man, this is going to be a great positive conversation that's going to help me improve where I want it and need it most, right? So first off, so first and foremost, we got to help them understand what coaching is and what's in it for them if they're to partake in that activity. So we got to recruit that. So it sounds like this: hey, Herb, what I want for you is to help you stay ahead of the competition. I want you to maximize your success in your career. And ultimately, I want to make sure that I see you develop within our company, because I believe if you grow, then I'll grow. So it's a win-win. And are you open to sitting down and having some regular one-on-ones where we can help make that a possibility? And then, so that, see how, so I'm letting you know what's in it for you. I'm wanting, and then second, when the first sit down, I'm not going to just start telling, yelling, and selling. I'm going to set expectations around coaching. And that's not me telling you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start asking you, Herb, if we were going to sit down and have one-on-ones regularly, but it was your topic, your challenge, your goals, your agenda, how would you want those to go? How can I be the best coach for you? Right? It's guys, it's the law of reciprocity. As I'm doing my cultural I do cultural assessments. I visit a dealership. I spend the entire day there. I've got really powerful surveys that predict and prevent turnover. But as I'm doing those cultural assessments, I always ask managers, what would you want? How could coaching benefit you? And I hear very frequently, help me motivate my team, right? Help me motivate my team. They won't listen to me, or, man, they're lazy. So those are just scams. Those are limiting beliefs. Scams mean stories, cons, assumptions, or mindsets. And at the end of the day, if I help you with your agenda, right, then it's the law of reciprocity. You will be willing to help me with mine. If I listen to you first, you'll be willing to listen to me next. And that is a powerful tool when it comes to coaching. So instead of trying to fit you into the box and treat you the way I want to be treated, I'm going to learn how I can best coach you. And I, as the leader, am going to meet you where you're at and try to meet and exceed those expectations. So some salespeople may say, keep it to 30 minutes, get to the point, and do it once a week. Another person might say, let's coach once a month for an hour. And I'd really appreciate it if it was always positive and supportive. And then so you got to meet them where they're at, and you got to coach with the law of reciprocity in mind. Does that help answer that question?
Yeah, dude, and I love it, and it just triggered two more questions that I want to explore. But I really like it because I think it addresses maybe the misconception that you're walking into these dealerships with a cookie cutter approach of this is how I do it, and it works for every time for every store, right? So at this point, I mean, you've obviously been coaching at the stores across the country. Is there obviously not a one size fits all approach, but is there a way that is the most successful? For example, and I think it was Matt. I always mispronounce his last name. Sorry, Matt Koenig from the Rockstar event, and he was on the show last season, and we were talking something similar, and he said something that kind of stuck with me. And I think that you're subscribed to the same philosophy, which is you don't train you don't coach the salespeople. You coach the leaders, right? Because then if the leaders are coached, then they'll be able to coach their staff, and at the same time, they'll be able to perpetuate that, right? So, I mean, do you think that that's the most effective way? Like, what are your thoughts on as far as an approach to making it stick? Because here's the deal, man. And I've been in coaching situations where I feel awesome today, right? And then tomorrow it's a little bit less, and then the next day it's a little bit less, and then 5 days from now I don't even remember anything, and I'm back to my old habits, right? Because I don't have that support, or I don't have that accountability factor that's with me, right?
Right.
And so how can we perpetuate that coaching experience?
Well, great question, Herb. And what am I doing on, hold on, let me see here. I'm pulling up my calendar for the viewers. What am I doing on Monday, the 21st, as it relates to our last coaching conversation? Right.
We're following up, on the conversation we had last week. Yeah.
That's right. And I won't get into details, right? Because that was a private conversation. But at the end of the day, like I know your action plan, because all of my coaching conversations are documented, right? And then I'm going to be checking up on it. And I know exactly what you're supposed to do, what you committed to doing, and knowing that I'm going to be checking. Guys, managers, you're not perfect. And it's funny because it's and neither are your salespeople. None of us are perfect. We all screw up, and we've got to give ourselves a little grace. It's funny how, and we are our own worst critic, right? So when we do screw up, it's really easy. I mean, we beat ourselves up worse than anyone else could, right? So the last thing, when someone doesn't execute perfectly on their action plan, it's really easy to want to just go on the attack and beat them down. But there's no point in doing that, because they're already beating themselves down, especially in a sales situation, because they've lost a sale. They're stressed out, and now they're beating themselves up for losing the sale. Maybe their customer beat them up, so they don't need the manager to do it as well. So I share this because, instead, when someone doesn't execute on that action plan, it's not why didn't you and going on the attack. It's, hey, what got in the way? Let's coach on it. Is that still important to you? Is there something else that's more important that you're doing, right? And it turns into a coaching conversation. It's called the cycle of continuous improvement. We reach a level where we get comfortable and we just keep doing the same thing we've always done. And the problem with that is if you keep doing what you've always done, no, you don't get the same result. That's a lie. You get less than you've always gotten because the rest of the world is changing around you. So there's a decline in success and productivity if you keep doing what you've always done. So that's where coaching comes in, right? It's continuous, ongoing, positive behavioral change with accountability, support, measurement, follow-up, and ultimately those coaching wins. Every time you have a one-on-one, you bring up what you coached on last time. Okay, Herb, did you put together that description, right? Yeah. Have you gone over that with them yet? Hey, do you want me to look that? How can I help you look through that and make sure it's going to have the biggest positive impact? It's like I'll share a good example of this that helps perpetuate it. I was coaching a guy named Zach, and again, I won't say his last name. He was not TOing customers, and that was a requirement to be a salesperson on my showroom floor. And he had actually lost his job at a prior dealership for not TOing customers too. Now, at this point, again, I was a coach. The old Sean would have been yelling, telling, or selling. You got to TO, man. You're going to make so much more money if you TO. But now I'm a coach, and so I changed the game. I always share my shortcomings as a manager because I know managers can relate. Managers, don't you get tired of just constantly having the same conversations with people and then not changing? It drains you, right? You feel like you're pushing a broken down train up a hill. So wouldn't it be cool if you could just talk to once and change the behavior? You know what I'm saying? So this guy, and right. So I talked to him and I say, hey, you're not TOing. Well, I didn't start off with that. I recruited him first. I said, hey, Zach, I want to see you get promoted into finance one day because I know that's important to you. When can we sit down and talk about that? And he's like, right now. So we sat down. I said, okay, cool. How will meeting these expectations help you get promoted into finance? He's like, well, if I'm doing what you told me to do, then I should, or if I'm exceeding them, it should help me move up. You'll want to promote me over someone who isn't. I said, yeah, you're spot on. I was like, so which of these expectations do you feel like you could do a better job meeting? And he went through the list and he said, oh, I could TO more. I was like, okay, what's getting in the way of you TOing? he's like, well, you guys always look busy. And also, I'm an awesome closer. If I can't close them, why would you be able to? Pretty funny, isn't it? So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm a pretty good closer too, Zach. But anyway, so I said, hey, Zach, let's do some math. How much more money would you make if I was the worst, if myself and the management team were the worst TO managers in the world? How many could we save for you? So we did some math, and it ended up, it was like a $20,000 a year raise for him if we were like saving 5% of his sales. And then we came up, I asked him, I go, how can you alert us that you need a TO without interrupting us? And he came up with a great idea. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll wave one of those American flags that we put in all our Hyundais. He's like, I'll wave one of those when I walk in your office, so you'll see me and you'll know I need a TO. And then if you can help me, you'll help me. And I go, and if not, I'll get someone else to TO. So from then on, I said, okay, so how should I approach you if you don't do it? How should I hold you accountable to this? And he says, fire me. I'm like, fire you? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I don't want to fire you, man. Are you sure you're going to do this? He's like, yeah. All right. So from then on, all right. So I said, when should I check in to see if you're TOing? So we set like a follow-up for 2 weeks later or whatever. And I checked his TO percentage went up almost 40%. His closing percentage went up almost 10%. And to this date, he just left there recently, but this was a coaching conversation 5 years ago, right? 2 years after that, he was one of the top TO salespeople at the dealership, every month after month for years consistently after that. And every time I sat down with him, I would pull those results up and I'd say, congratulations, brother, you did it. But every time he'd start to drop, I didn't browbeat him, right? I would just say, hey man, how can you improve? What's getting in the way of the TOs? Is that it's like, oh no, I'm good. You don't have to fire me. I'll get back on it. I promise. You see what I'm saying? So you're celebrating the wins. You're perpetuating the success by doing that.
Yeah, right. And plus you're getting him involved in that accountability process for himself, right? And when you do it, when he said fire me, he actually he committed and invested in that with you, right? Because he did it himself. It's not something that he has to feel afraid that this is going to happen to me. It's, hey, I made a commitment to you that this is what I'm going to do, and if I don't do it, then this is what I feel my punishment should be. So no, I totally agree, man. That's pretty awesome. The other question that comes to mind as a replay your last our last question is, how do you overcome? And I'm sure that you've run into this before, but what I consider to be one of the biggest pitfalls, and I'll share a personal experience. So in my past professional, experiences and roles and stuff, I've been fortunate enough where I worked for some companies that did offer some sort of coaching and things of that nature, but I was never sincere in the. I'm not going to say never, but in the beginning, right? I was never sincere in the evaluation portion, right? So I always felt the need to not really talk about what I wanted, but what I thought the company wanted me to want, right? And as a coach, how can you really coach somebody when they're not really being honest with you and telling you like, hey man, this is what I want for myself, and not be afraid that they think that just because a company is providing this service that they have to, tell you, oh, I want you to help me here and here and here because I think as an employee that's what my employer wants. Does that make sense? Just a little. I don't want to make sure that.
Yes. So just to clarify, you're curious about when someone, if someone isn't coachable or doesn't want coaching, how do you deal with that?
Or maybe they do, but they're just afraid of really being sincere with the coach and telling them exactly what they need, what they want for their professional growth, because they feel that it doesn't align with what their employer wants. You know what I mean? And so naturally we just lie, right? And we're like, oh, well, I want to sell more cars just because Matt, the GSM, wants me to sell more cars, but that's not really what I want. Maybe what I really want is I want to connect more with my customers. I want to learn how to do videos and post them on the internet and build my own brand or something like that. You know what I mean?
How about I want to be a real estate agent, or how about I want to start a coaching practice?
There you go. Yeah.
Well, it's a great.
Dude, by the way, really quick, what you taking over the world, man? That whiteboard back there, that looks intense.
Yeah. we had a late, one of my coaches and I had a late night meeting a week ago or so, and we've been traveling since. So that's the remnants of it. I probably should have erased it before, but either way, it kind of looks kind of cool. Yeah, I got a big couple whiteboard walls in the office here. But okay, so to answer your question, that's the crazy part about coaching, and everyone in the industry talks about turnover, right? We got to eliminate turnover from the industry, and I would say that one thing I've learned in my coaching travels is that there is healthy turnover. You should have some degree of healthy turnover. So what I consider healthy turnover is when someone has been trained, brought on board, knowing the company's vision and the core values it takes to be on that team and part of that culture. They've been trained up after and onboarded. Once they've been coached up to a level that they're ready to grow beyond where your company can put them. So, for instance, here's a crazy thing. The owner of my company he asked me to give a month's notice at least if I was going to leave at some point to do my coaching, but he never tried to force his hand to make me do what he wanted him to do. It wouldn't have changed my ambition, right? I still would have wanted growth. I still would have set out on this mission to bring coaching to the car business. So healthy turnover. So when I quit, I left the dealership better off than I found it. And we were able to promote 7 people behind me. And then they hired me to do training and coaching for the entire dealer group, which was an honor and a blessing. And that really helped me. But the whole point is that's healthy turnover. And, if I left the dealership as a result of being coached up, then the question becomes, if my business didn't work out or I wasn't happy doing what I was doing, where am I going to go work? Right. And think about when I share that, you know what I'm saying? And think about when I share that with the people around my community, what dealership do they want to go buy their cars from? Where do they want to work at? Right.
But if you're in that midst of getting coached, but you're not being sincere with the coach during his assessment, does that make you not, what am I trying to say? Does it make your coaching irrelevant because you're not addressing what that person is really trying to accomplish, right? It's kind of this facade of, this is what I think the company wants me to want, so that's what I'm going to tell the coach. You know what I'm saying? Or is there a way to kind of pull that out of that person to be like, hey, based on your assessment, you kind of figure out that they're not really being truthful.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
100%. It's so. Long story short, you've got to change the mindset. You've got to change the culture of your business. You've got to believe that you've got to create that trust. Okay, because one of the 15 laws of growth is that growth happens when it's cultivated, when there's a culture that cultivates it, and their trust is a serious challenge that has to be overcome. And that's why there's got to be the recruitment. There's got to be the alignment. You don't just say, okay, we're going to start coaching. I mean, I'm not kidding you when I say I spent 6 months beating my head against the wall trying to create this coaching culture and become, but there was elements missing. And so, yes, I was here, I'm going back, 5-6 years, but I was hearing the whole, just help me sell 5 more cars a month. And so number one, that's part of coaching, right? It's what were your biggest takeaways? Confirm the value of the conversation. So a couple things, right? If there's no value to be confirmed, if they're not executing on the action plan, if they're not following up, when you go as the coach and you're checking in and you're inspecting what you expect, and you're gonna, instead of celebrating the growth, if you're constantly, then bottom line is this: there's some sort of misalignment going on, and it's and you've got to be candid. You've got to address it directly. So then the question becomes, do we keep this person on the team? If they don't want to grow, is that someone you want as part of your team, or are they, is that okay? At the end of the day, coaching is a gift for them, right? It's not for you.
Right.
So it doesn't really matter what their agenda is, but if they won't be honest with you and tell you what they really want, and I have a whole process for uncovering that. And I have yet to, I've heard people wanting to start dispensaries when they're like, I'm just selling cars. I opened up a dispensary one day. I'm like, okay, let's coach you towards that. I don't know the use of that, but
hey, you got to sell a ton of cars to get there, man, because you need some dough to open those up.
I would imagine. So my point is that, if it's not working, then there's either a lack of trust or your coaching isn't working. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say coaching isn't working, so I'm not
Right.
going to do it. I'm going to give up. Try to figure out what's going on, or hire yourself a coach so you can learn how to coach. You can't read a manual on it or watch a video on it and all of a sudden you're a freaking coach, right? So yes, if someone isn't coachable, it's not that they're not coachable. It's just that they're not being honest with you, and you've got to address it. You've got to say, look, and I saved the email that I sent out to my entire dealership team when I wanted to create this coaching culture, and I set the expectation up front. I said, look, we are going to stay ahead of our competition, and it's really important that you learn to accept and receive coaching, no different than I'm going to as your manager and as your leader. And if you don't, then you will fall behind and you will end up not being a part of this team at some point. But I will give you every opportunity to, and that's so you've got to set those expectations, create alignment, and then you've got to help. You've got to create the wins so that there's value in doing it, and everyone stays bought in. And people will come around, man. I'm coaching this Mercedes store. They have a 30-year sales veteran, the top salesperson at the store. And he's selling about 7 more cars a month now on average. That didn't happen right off the bat. And, he was kind of, this coaching thing. Well, 4 or 5 months in, when he's seeing everyone else getting all these wins and they're improving and they're selling more cars and they're working less hours and they're getting promoted and everyone's succeeding, then he's like, okay, well, let's do some coaching. And we ended up coaching on time management and helping him organize his day. And now he's less stressed out. He's selling an average of about 7 more cars a month, and he's getting more referrals, and his customers are happier because of it. So, sometimes it takes, you've got your early adopters and then you've got your late bloomers, but just being consistent, because consistency compounds.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. All right, dude, listen, man, I love this conversation. I feel like, every time you're on the show, dude, it's like I could talk to you for like hours, man, but
no, it's an honor
yeah, dude.
Me on Dealer Talk again.
Yeah, man. So I wanted to definitely give you a moment to talk about what you got going on. Like I said earlier, I've personally benefited from coaching. I personally benefited from coaching from you. And it's one of the reasons why I just, I like what you're doing. I get behind your vision, and I'm a fan, dude. And I want you to be able to share with everybody what you got going on. Like I said, I believe that this is going to bring a lot of value. It's going to change some lives within the industry. And so let us know, dude, what you've been cooking, man, for the past couple of months.
Well, when I set out on my mission to bring coaching to the car business, I didn't realize, I guess one of the expectations that I wasn't quite aware of was how, as a coach, you trade time for money and you can only take on so many clients. Now, so I'm booked out through next year. Now, here's the beauty of this whole thing is that I have, because I failed, and I believe that sometimes you succeed, other times you learn. As long as you learn, you didn't fail. But up till now, I hadn't learned how to coach at the scale that I need to in order to bring coaching to the car business. And I've been beating my head against the wall trying to figure that out. So I have. So even though to date, and I'm not kidding you when I tell you this, I've told so many people, here's what my fees are, and salespeople can't afford it, man. Only dealer principals, GMs, only dealers as a whole can afford our coaching right now. Well, I fixed that. So a lot of people are saying, I can't afford coaching. I can't hire Sean. But you can. Everyone can afford coaching now because I've been working diligently on creating a platform that can allow anyone to receive the coaching that they need to receive one-on-one. You get your own coach. You get your own real coaching conversation with a live coach, with follow-up, with check-in, with support, an action plan. We've created a system, and it works great. I don't care if you've got what kind of training you've got. This is going to be less than $70 a month. You get all that. So, number one, managers, I know a lot of you guys are thinking my people don't want coaching. They're too salty. They won't. I promise you this, there isn't an employee on your showroom floor that would turn down effective coaching if they knew what it was. Okay. But you've got to help them experience it. Okay. Some of those people, you're thinking, man, I can't afford it. Now you can. So I'm going to give anyone who watches the Dealer Talk, I've got an unbelievable offer for anyone who is a fan of Dealer Talk or a fan of myself, who's literally, I've turned down over 200 people have said, I can't afford your services. And now everyone can afford it. So if you're a fan of Dealer Talk, or you're a friend of mine or a fan of mine, you can get coaching for less than $70 a month. And I will give you a 14-day free trial to get started for free. So you can have your very first coaching conversation on me. And yes, less than $70 a month. It's $67. And when you bring someone in, when you bring a friend or family, once you receive the value and you bring one of your coworkers in, your manager in, you're going to get paid to do that. It's phenomenal. So they're going to be able to sign up on that, Herb, after very shortly here.
Yeah, so that's amazing, dude. So like I said, I've been a benefactor of it. I know that it works. I know that it's impactful. And what I'll say is this, man: you can't put a price on personal development and personal growth, right? And learning from somebody that has the experience, that has a proven track record at those prices, I mean, it's unbeatable, and the value far way exceeds the cost. And so I'm very happy to be able to help you out with this deal. I just want to, say that we don't get any compensation for promoting these things. The reason why I see the value in this is because I know you, I know what you can do. And for you to make this accessible to so many people in this way, it's pretty impressive. And you got to make sure to check this deal out. We're going to put it in the show notes when this episode drops on the audio portion of things. So go to the show notes and make sure to look out for that link. And then we'll attach it to this video on our Facebook page and on LinkedIn and any other place where we're going to distribute this. But yeah, man, I mean, listen, for less than $70 a month to get coached by the Car Biz Coach. Yep. That's pretty impressive, man. And I'm excited to share it alongside you, dude. For sure, man. So that's awesome.
I appreciate you always being an advocate and helping me in my mission to bring coaching to the car business. And I'm just glad I finally figured out a way to accomplish that. And now I can stop learning failing in my mission and really start making the impact that people really deserve and need in our industry. And again, if you think hopefully I hope we've accomplished one of my goals in this, which was to help people understand what coaching really is, and that it's not this mushy, touchy-feely stuff. I mean, it can be if it needs to be, but at the end of the day, it's all about your topic, your agenda, your goals, and it gives you the support and the guidance that you need. I mean, imagine, every pro athlete, I love what you said in the beginning, right? Every pro athlete has the coach on the sidelines watching them play the game and helping them where they need it most. And now you can have that for less than $70 a month. And I really believe that it's going to change the game. I think we're about to change people development in our industry as we know it. And I'm really excited to help usher in that change. And thank you for being a part of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll reiterate, man, like, look, you can't expect to win if you haven't invested the time and practice and done the training that you need to do, not the training, but the coaching that you need to do in order to grow and acquire the knowledge and the skill. It doesn't make sense to have that expectation. And that's why few people outperform, right? Is because only a few amount of people, a select few, are the ones that are constantly investing in themselves and in their personal growth. So in order for you to get to those levels, man, you have to invest in yourself. It's a must. There's just no way around it. And to have this level of coaching at that price, I mean, I think it's pretty awesome, dude. And, again,
thanks, my friend.
I just thank you for everything you do for the industry, man. It's pretty amazing. There is one question I ask everybody that comes on the show, man, and I've asked it to you twice, so I'm going to ask it again. Where do you see the automotive industry headed in the next 5 years, and why?
Well, I see an entire leadership landscape coaching their team, and I see that the leaders in our industry that have adopted this level of people development and have learned to be masterful coaches are going to be light years ahead of their competition, because their salespeople are going to be doing the things that it takes to stay ahead of the competition and stay ahead of the threats that are looming. Everything from the digital retailing that could stand to replace kiosk selling. Those things are real, and they are taking more and more market share every single day. The different methods of purchasing, the what do you call it? Subscription services models, all that stuff, right? So the leaders that are coaching are going to be the ones that stay ahead of the curve, and unfortunately, the people that decide not to adopt this new way of leadership are going to fall behind. So I think you're going to see a lot of automation, subscription models. Again, there will always be the car business, but where are the people in it is the question. So you're going to have pros that have become coaches and are receiving coaching effectively, and then you're going to have kiosks is what I see. That's my prediction. Right
on. There it is. Folks, thank you so much. Again, super happy to be able to do this first ever live session with the Car Biz Coach. Make sure to check the show notes on how you can get in touch with him, and check out the link to what he has to offer. Again, I mean, the value far outweighs the cost. And that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as usual, we'll talk later.